Incoming major spoilers for Mouthwashing and Deltarune Chapter 4. Cutscenes, by design, retract what many consider to be the most important element of the video gaming experience. That's a few minutes, the player is forced to step back and let the game take its course, setting the controller or keyboard aside as they watch the action take place, watching it but not participating. Watching a cutscene in, say, an action video game and watching a scene in an action film may be similar in terms of content or demonstration, yet it's the cutscene where there's a sense of loss. Scenes you, the audience, change from player to viewer. Your agency is therefore ripped from you. Yet this loss doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Cheng writes in his paper, Waiting for Something to Happen, Narratives, Interactivity, and Agency in the video game cutscene, that meaningful action can be easily described as meaningful inaction for the player. Because sometimes, taking your hands off of the controls makes for a more profound gaming experience. Cutscenes found in the independent video games Mouthwashing and Deltarune use disempowerment, or meaningful inaction, to reinforce thematic ideas of the player never truly being the one in control. Mouthwashing, a psychological horror game made by development team Wrong Organ, released in 2024, is a troubling game. You play as Jimmy, who is the acting captain of a freighter spaceship called the Topar. The previous captain, his name was Curly, has been relieved of his duties after he is suspected of crashing the Topar into an asteroid, leaving the ship damaged in many areas. The game involves Jimmy navigating the oppressive and cramped hulls of the Topar to keep an eye on his crew. Anya, the nurse, Daisuke, the fresh intern, and Swansea, the jaded repairman. Jimmy, however, is not as he seems. Despite seemingly fulfilling his duties as captain, it becomes clear that he is dodging the responsibility of something even greater than his role. As times get more and more dire, so too does Jimmy start to unravel under the pressure. Anya and Daisuke, over the course of the game, each die indirectly because of Jimmy's actions, and eventually, Swansea is the only crew member left able-bodied. Swansea is an interesting character. Swansea spends most of the game drunk off of the supply of, mouthwash the Topar is hauling. 14% ethanol, enough to intoxicate a person at high amounts. And Swansea has high amounts. He's quite contrasted by Jimmy's constant stream of duties, and at certain points he's almost a point of comic relief. Swansea has long accepted his fate, a point of frustration for Jimmy, who can't quite outrun the consequences of his actions as much as he may try. You can see this in many of their conversations together. It's only when Swansea is forced to take Daisuke out of his misery, due to previous injuries, again, a result of Jimmy's actions, that he decides to take matters into his own hands. You, as Jimmy, gun down Swansea, who is hunting you down axe in hand towards the end of the game, in this surreal graveyard sequence, likely an exaggerated depiction of Jimmy and Swansea's struggle within the Topar. Once you shoot him 3 times, you are sent to reality to face the repairman for the final time in a cutscene. I have something to say. So shut up and listen. I spent 13 years half cut up to my eyeballs. Drunk, to put it mildly. Then suddenly I saw it. Street light shining in my face. 500 gigawatts of the power of God. A vision of my bloated body found in some ditch. Scared me straight. So I got a collar shirt, mortgage, and a credit card. All the things that make a good man. I hoped I could raise my children to be better than their old man. I wanted to believe I was never one setback away from my worst self. But the truth is, discipline, drive, routine, endless fucking desperation to get shit done. Loving wife, great kids, sobriety. I'm telling you, accomplishments I've been chasing all my life, never felt as good as I expected when I crossed the finish line. So now that we're at the end, taking inventory, those nights spinning out of my head, sinking into the sofa, broken glass in my palms, bleeding dry, the funniest thing ever. Old dogs laughing and snarling on a waterbed floor, mocking the moon for daring to show its face. All nausea and wreckage and vomit and ugly cruelty. The only problem in the world, an empty bottle. Those were the best days of my life. Yeah. Those were the best days of my life. I got nothing to hide. Ready to face the music. I can see myself for what I am. You? Cowardly, selfish motherfucker, and you can't even see it. To protect the kid. If I could have done one thing right, I wish it had been to give him one small chance off this goddamn rock. Lindsay, I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to make it. You. In a paper written by Silva et al., special focus is given to the dynamic relationship of gameplay and narrative tension in video games. Here, with this cutscene, mouthwashing disrupts gameplay tension characterized by Silva et al. As depending on the immersion of the player in the game and his desire to win the story. Swansea's speech comes as this dreadful realization that regardless of this furthering the game, you have not arrived at a win state. No confetti or prize. In fact, it feels more like a loss. Jimmy and Swansea face each other, shrouded in darkness, as what seems to be flashes of Swansea's life occurring in the background, flashing before his eyes, as it were. He tells Jimmy that the years in which he had no responsibilities before his time on the Tulpar were the best days of his life, and that at least he can see himself for what he is. In accepting his life as it was, no responsibilities and all, he therefore accepts his death. Swansea has indeed taken responsibility for everything, even failing Daisuke, and is quote-unquote facing the music, as it were. Something Jimmy cannot even fathom. Jimmy's response is generic. He says, "We're gonna get through this," ignoring the fact that all he's done in the game has only exacerbated the issue in favor of stubbornly pushing through just for the sake of it. A habit that Swansea calls out himself throughout the game. He will not let himself take responsibility, because that would suggest he is wrong. Almost a relief for you to not be in Jimmy's body. You thank God that you aren't in his place, that you are physically separated by the cutscene and by your computer screen. Yet you are. You are in his place. You are relegated to listening to Swansea's speech just as Jimmy is. You are just as powerless. To some extent, you are also being scolded. Ironically, despite Swansea being the one restrained, it is he who renders you and Jimmy immobile by confronting him head on, just as the video game's cutscene that rips the player from the corporeal. Jimmy's actions are purely his own, same way yours are purely your own. You as a player cannot force Jimmy to take responsibility or to stop him from shooting Swansea at the end, just as you cannot prevent the deaths of Anya and Daisuke. You are forced to watch Jimmy's delusions steal the lives of his crew in a cutscene, relieving you of all guilt, yet never letting you feel like you've quite won. Released in 2018 by developer Toby Fox, Deltarune is a role-playing game, or RPG, in which you play as Chris, a human who is destined to save the world from the Roaring Night, who has been creating mysterious dark fountains all over their hometown. They are joined by Susie, the monster, and Rousey, a prince from the Dark World, a strange realm created from said dark fountains that gives life to everyday objects. Fantastical elements such as these are quite typical for the average RPG, but the main theme decidedly is not. Our choices do not matter. In the very first sequence of the game, the player is asked to create a vessel to inhabit, only for it to be discarded immediately. Although you can control Chris, Susie, and Rousey while traveling or within combat, there are moments in which characters will move onto areas without you or take actions without your input. For example, when you attempt to play the piano in this one section, it's clumsy and discordant. Very clear that you're just pressing keys on your keyboard. Until Chris takes over with Susie's encouragement. Chris's piano playing here is wonderful, although it's not perfect. The name is specifically written in the game files that it is called The Piano That May Not Be Played That Well. It's a small moment in the sea of hours of full player control. Cutscenes, like this one, therefore relish in these small moments of character, quote-unquote, autonomy. In Deltarune Chapter 4, the most recent one in the game so far as of writing the script, the heroic trio struggle to reach the Roaring Night as it throws blades and blows them backwards. Player's input is restrained to dodging a few swords, but soon it becomes futile as the sequence continues, as walls of swords strike the heroes down, rendering both them and the player powerless. Each character jumps in front of one another once they've gone down to 1 HP, the others physically lifting the downed up and pressing forward. As Wysocki suggests in her literary analysis thesis of RPG cutscenes, quote, lead the player to important conclusions regarding the character's motivations and actions. The friendship between these three is steadfast, in spite of the odds. The Roaring Night clearly overpowers the trio, but there is nowhere to run. There's no other choice other than to go on and face it. This is not your moment. It is Chris's, Susie's, and Rousey's. You are just a guiding force that must at some point release control so that they may move on. Susie, tough but protective, jumps to Chris's defense for their safety, and Rousey, self-sacrificial and caring, braves forward despite his fear. In combination, these three friends are able to do what you cannot as a player. The player's activity doesn't matter. It could be said that the Roaring Knight's power does not matter either. Regardless of both, the heroes are able to reach the end of the corridor. Unlike Mouthwashing, the lack of control does not mean despair, but hope. The heroes create their own destiny with or without the player. And while our choices may not matter, it doesn't mean that the characters' choices do not. They, in time, will get their ending, even if you do not have the power to give it to them. I have not been able to get these moments out of my head. So often do I and many others use games to escape from a world that we cannot control into one that we can. The shock of the game not conforming, not listening to my hands, stuns me. And for once, I'm really seeing the story that I'm steeped in. Mouthwashing asks me if I can see myself for what I am and if I am truly present and aware of the consequences of my actions. Deltarune tells me that although life is unfair and I do not always have control over every event, it doesn't make the journey less meaningful, far from it. Both do this in small moments that can be swallowed up by other striking visuals of the game, but really that is all they need. For the few precious minutes in which these games demand our full attention in the digital world, they can teach us something about how to create meaningful inaction in our own lives, to make our own paths. Thank you for watching. If my video somehow convinces you to play both of these games, then I am more than happy. Both Mouthwashing and Deltarune in its entirety is available on Steam and are both really good experiences. Mouthwashing is, I'd say, about 3 to 4 hours. Deltarune is a bit longer of a time sink, but I assure you it is all well worth it. This is my first ever video, and I'm sure it's apparent. Please do ignore any editing or audio issues. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you're having a good day wherever you are.